Drugs. It's fair to say they have somewhat of a complicated relationship with music. On one level, they've been the subject of some of the greatest songs of the 20th and 21st centuries. On another, they've been responsible for some of the most obnoxious pieces of music ever released, not to mention a selection of the worst YouTube videos to ever grace the internet. We've all been to parties where you have to sit through some indulgent DMT story from a psychonaut bro about how
the way the DMT made him feel, man, it was just like he was entering into a different universe.
Having said all that, when artists get it right, music offers an opportunity to share those moments in a way that is compelling rather than tedious. Which brings us to our list of the top 5 songs written about drugs. We've tried to stay away from the massively obvious choices, so don't be expecting any
Gutty tech house
tunes produced by second-year Leeds students around Hyde Park. So put away your Camden Market-sourced paraphernalia and wave goodbye to my future employment prospects as we count down Death for the Record's top 5 songs written about drugs. Number 5, Needle in the Hay, Elliott Smith. Elliott Smith was simply one of the greatest songwriters and lyricists of his generation, and the man responsible for bringing together the traditions of lo-fi indie music with classical folk balladry and instrumentation. Personally, his self-titled sophomore record remains my favourite album of his, and the opening track on that record is the hauntingly bleak Needle in the Hay. Now, songs about drugs can vary in tone as immensely as one's own experiences of drugs can vary. There are songs that seek to replicate blissed-out trips or mellow highs, all the way to ones that serve as anxiety-inducing accounts of addiction and suffering. This song certainly falls into the latter category. Lyrically, the droning of the repeated chorus, Needle in the Hay, isn't the most explicit reference to drugs that you'll find in music, but what really makes this song so affecting is the utter despair that Smith imbues his words with his delivery. This effect is enhanced by one of the more interesting lyrical touches of any song on our list that you can find in the last verse of Needle in the Hay. Smith extends the sibilance of the final S sound into a full-on hiss, evoking the sound of heroin being cooked up in a spoon.
Hope that I'm getting good marks.
Of course, a final note has to go to Wes Anderson's use of this song in the Royal Tenenbaums. Despite the fact that Elliott Smith was reportedly upset with the song's use in the film, the scene certainly taps into the sheer misery expressed in this wonderful, wonderful track.
I'm going to kill myself tomorrow.
Number 4, 10 Crack Commandments, Notorious B.I.G. Speaking of the variety of tones you can find in drug-themed songwriting, there are also myriad ways in which society relates to drugs too, as users, as law enforcement, or even as the people who find themselves forced to sell it to make a living. Hip-hop's relationship to drugs is complex, but the crack epidemic of the 1980s that saw the huge growth of crack cocaine usage in urban communities across the United States was inevitably tied in with the genesis of the genre. As hip-hop became the sound of these urban areas, the manifestations of the crack epidemic became a key theme in the music too. It's depressing to think, but the racial and social implications of drug use often find their way into the music regardless. Put it this way, it's safe to say that Simon and Garfunkel didn't write any songs about selling crack in the 1980s. Anyway, Biggie's 10 Crack Commandments, taken from his posthumous album Life After Death, is a typically witty, although not unserious account of 10 rules to be followed to ensure both your safety and your success as a dealer. Biggie masterfully blends in classic maxims like never get high on your own supply and bad boys move in silence with his own more unsparing social observation.
If not, 24 years on the wake up. Slug hit your temple, watch your frame shake up.
This is classic Biggie lyricism. There's wordplay, internal rhyme, and a playful, smooth tone that belies the seriousness of the topic underneath. And that's why it's number 4 on our list. Rest in peace, Biggie. Number 3, Spiritualized, Cop Shoot Cop. Now this is likely one of the less famous choices on our list, but fans of Spiritualized won't be surprised to see the group feature in a video related to drug use. Early in his career, Spiritualized Jason Pierce was a member of the group Spacemen 3, a band whose relationship with drugs was so fundamental that they literally made an album called Taking Drugs to Make Music to Take Drugs To. And the theme remained important later on in Pierce's career too. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the songs he writes seem to be alternately dedicated to heroin and heartbreak. As such, there were plenty of songs to choose from. In the end, I went with Cop Shoot Cop, whose epic 17-minute length strives to capture the joy, despair, and chaos of heroin addiction. Lyrically, it's the song's opening line that really stands out.
Hey man, there's a hole in my arm where all the money goes.
The lyric is both an illustration of the financial perils of heroin addiction, as well as a metaphor for what the drug can do to people in an addict's life. The track marks on their arms becoming like black holes that suck everything in around them. Funnily enough, this specific lyric was actually repurposed from a line in the John Prine song Sam Stone, where it went something like this.
There's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes.
As I see it, Jason Pierce made a career of a few things. 1, being an unbelievably ambitious musician and producer. 2, being a great chronicler of lost love and drug abuse. And 3, being one of the most efficient and artful thieves in the history of music. The way he incorporates and steals from his influences on all his albums is really something to be marvelled at, and I mean this very sincerely as a compliment. If you are interested to hear more about Spiritualize, you can check out the link in our description to our podcast episode that just went up about them, but for now, let's get back to the video. Number 2, Velvet Underground, Heroin. Yeah, we're getting to the big guns now. In my opinion, this is one of those songs that is so iconic, it's almost come full circle and become underrated again. Along with other tracks from this album like I'm Waiting for the Man, Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground wrote music that sought to bring the sensitivities of the novel to rock. As such, they didn't necessarily glorify drugs, instead writing songs that closely observed and described their effects with a novelist's meticulous eye. Although that didn't stop fans occasionally approaching the band after live performances to tell them that they'd shot up to the song, a phenomenon that deeply disturbed Reed. In terms of the lyrics, it doesn't really get much more direct or chill-inducing than that first verse as the tempo and instrumentation start to pick up. And Lou Reed sings, "It makes me feel like a man when I put that spike into my vein."
'Cause it makes me feel like I'm a man when I put a spike into my vein.
In an interview with WLIR in 1972, Reed said he wrote the lyrics while working for a record company. He said, "I was working as a songwriter where they'd lock me in a room and they'd say, write 10 surfing songs. And I wrote Heroin, and I said, hey, I got something for you." Funnily enough, Heroin wasn't quite what they were looking for. Number 1, The Beatles. Happiness is a warm gun. Okay, I can tell already that some people are going to be angry about this choice. When it comes to the Beatles, there are so many amazing songs in their discography that are written with drugs as a theme, or drugs as an inspiration, or indeed written while on drugs. You can pick any number of classic tracks. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Dr. Robert, Tomorrow Never Knows, She Said, Day Tripper, Magical Mystery Tour, I Am the Walrus, Got to Get You Into My Life. I could go on and on. But ultimately, I had to pick a song from the White Album. Definitely the most heroin-centric of all the Beatles albums. And I chose Happiness is a Warm Gun, which might just be my favourite John Lennon song ever. Musically, it is staggeringly inventive, with shifting time signatures, God knows how many key changes, and those stunning doo-wop harmonies from Paul and George in the chorus. There is a lot going on in this song, so much so that it took the Beatles 95 takes to get it right. As for the drug content, the song's title and chorus lyrics are actually taken from an NRA campaign slogan. And in terms of the theme, Lennon outright denied it was about drugs at all, claiming instead that the warm gun, spike and fix referred to his relationship with Yoko Ono, which at that point was in, and I quote, its deeply sexual stage. His words, not mine. But to me, John's denial only confirms that songwriters are some of the worst people to ask if you want an honest or accurate analysis of the themes probed in their very own songs. So fuck it. As far as I'm concerned, Happiness is a Warm Gun is a drug song. But beyond that, it also happens to be one of the best Beatles songs ever recorded.
Happiness is a warm, yes it is.
And that concludes this week's Top 5. Before I go, I want to very quickly shout out some honourable mentions. I know that when you combine a Top 5 clickbait title and the subject of drugs, the internet can react in aggressive ways. So I actively encourage everyone to comment down below their favourite songs written about drugs. In terms of our honourable mentions, Needle and the Damage is Done, Cold Turkey, loads of stuff by Led Zeppelin, Afro Man, JJ Cale, Jefferson Airplane, Nas, Jay-Z, Beach Boys, I Know There's an Answer, Spacemen 3, their whole discography, Primal Screen, and much, much more. Thanks for Death for the Record. We'll see you next week.